This video is going to discuss a God Roll craft for an important SMG this season. Before I get into that though, I just want to remind people, if you're not subscribed, then make sure you hit that subscribe button for more British sarcasm. But before I get into that, well, we'll get into it now. So I've just recently crafted this SMG. It's fantastic. 62,000 kills on it. Got perks like Master of Arms, Feeding Frenzy. Literally best SMG in the game. Obviously, that's not the SMG that we're talking about, but I've got it in my inventory for a good reason. So the SMG that we're really talking about is the Subjunctive. It's an ARC SMG from this season, which you can get your patterns via the Star-Crossed exotic mission, or focus and engrams, or getting your weekly focus as well as a weekly focus at the helm. So I'm going to give you the short answer for what the God Roll craft is on this gun. For people who want a quick answer, then you can get that. But then I'll go into the reasons behind each slot. So for the people who want the short answer, this is the God Roll craft. The Masterwork frame plus 10 reload speed. The barrel is hammerforged rifle. Flared Magwell. Enhanced threat detector. Enhanced vault shot. You don't need enhanced vault shot, I don't think. You could probably get away with just standard threat detector and standard vault shot if you really want to. If you don't want to spend on Senate allies, you definitely don't need enhanced vault shot, right? Because this is doing really nothing for us. So just go with that anyways. I just use it because I've got a Senate alloys to use, to be honest. So that's the short answer for you. Now this is the longer form answer. This is the answer that you really need to listen to anyways, to be honest. So you first need to understand SMGs in PvE, right? We need to understand how they work and interact with the game for PvE purposes, not PvP, right? Let's not bring up the PvP as a subject because this is a whole different ball game. We're talking about PvE. So your golden standard PvE SMGs are weapons like the Recluse Funnel Web. Funnel Web is actually almost the same as Recluse, just that it hasn't got Master of Arms. But it's very similar, right? Now, the reason why your Recluse or your Recluse archetype is your golden standard is because of its RPM, obviously because of its perk as well. But even a 900 RPM SMG without Master of Arms is still killing it in PvE. This is the golden standard, the 900 RPM for SMGs in PvE because their rate of fire to damage ratio is the sweet spot. It's your fastest fire rate of SMGs, basically, right? So that's why, because it can put out damage quicker, basically, right? But there's a lot more to it than just what I've just said. So the archetypes that we have, the other archetypes, well, you've got like this, the 7 Seraph, 600 RPM, right? Precision frames and stuff. And then you go up a tier to the 720 RPM, which is the middle of the road, right? With your Ikelos SMG. So its impact's higher, but its rate of fire is a little slower, but its mag is lower in turn of that. That's another thing. The 900 RPM SMGs have just a better mag size, right, for dealing with enemies and stuff. So, having known that, there's a new ARC SMG that's come out that's called the Subjunctive, which is a 900 RPM SMG. If we compare it to the Recluse, though, Recluse has got more range and more stability over it, and it does feel better than the Subjunctive. If I'm being honest, that actually reflects in the stats. But we can't do nothing about that because Recluse isn't a weapon that we can use in endgame stuff. So what else do we compare it to? Well, we compared it to the Ikelos SMG. So I've got a Vault Shot Ikelos. I've actually got two of these. I've got one with Frenzy, one with Vault Shot, but don't think about the Frenzy one for now. Just the Vault Shot roll. So if we compare the two stat-wise, right, then Ikelos has a far more range. The thing about the SMG range is this equates to 3 meters extra in damage. So even though it's a 56 stat range SMG and my subjunctive is a 36 stat range, this is only 3 meters extra. Apparently, when I look at the stats for this, my range drop off for this SMG when I go on d2arsenal.com is 15 meters. The Ikelos is 18 meters. Now, more range is more damage generally when you've got to play a little bit further back. But you're using an SMG, you can only go so far back, right? So the funny thing is, the perk threat detector has a 15-meter radius. So therefore, it plays into the fact that I've probably got the right stats on because my range drop off 15 meters and the threat detector is 15 meters. So it actually works out perfect, right? So those are the differences between them. So now we need to explain the stats and then go into each perk on why we didn't choose anything else. I'm sick of having to do this unequipped stuff. One sec. So we go back into it. So now that you understand that, so impact can't be altered. It's obviously fixated to the RPM. The range stat is a little important, but not too much on a weapon like this because it's a vault shot weapon. So it's not that important, but you want a little bit of, you don't invest too much into it, but just a little bit, I would say. At least get to 15 meters on your gun, which you can check on d2arsenal.com and it will tell you the meter drop off. So get it to 15 meters. If you copy my weapon craft though, you'll have it at 15 meters, which is perfect. Stability isn't that important, but if the recoil is that, if the recoil is so much a problem to you that it's difficult for you to control, then there are other options for you. I will say this, and it's really important: players on PC, next gen Xbox, and PS5 have an easier time to control recoil. PS4 users and last gen Xbox users have a hard time controlling recoil. How do I know this? Well, because I tested PS4 versus PS5. So I actually know with experience that PS4 users need stability on guns like SMGs and stuff like this. So their perk pool is different to yours. You are a privileged player. If you're PS5 or PC or next gen Xbox, you're privileged because the recoil's not as bad, but it is a stat that you can look at. And then you got handling. Handling's quite important on SMGs because you're readying your gun quite often. So what I generally say about handling is the quicker you can pull it out and the snappier the gun the overall feels. Reload speed is the most important stat overall on a gun like this because of how it works. So you want to invest a lot of stats into that, and then don't forget about the rest of the stats. You can always look at your recoil direction as well, but the rest of it doesn't matter, just the RPM. So the reason why I want obviously plus 10 reload speed is because we need to give it a bit of a bump to reload, of course. And like I said before, if we went with range, we're only going to add a little bit of like 2 meters, something like that. It's why would you want 2 meters extra range on an SMG over a little bit more reload? So you want reload, in my opinion. On console, PS4, you might maybe want to do the plus 42 stability, the extra 10 stability if it is a problem to you. On PS, that's for PS4 users only, though. So looking at the barrels, another option would be maybe small bore because it's going to bump up the stability a little bit. But even then, like I tried small bore and the gun was still a little bit, all over the place. So I just went with hammer forged rifling. Pick the barrel that you want to use. If you want a higher handling stat, fluted barrel. You're going to lose a lot of range though, and the meters is going to drop below 15 meters. And what did I just tell you? Threat detector works on a 15-meter radius. So you want to really spec 215 meters. Once you start going below that, then you start to see damage drop off and stuff. So I don't think fluid barrel's the way either. I think hammer forged rifling, but that's just my opinion. Right, then the mag option, I believe flared Magwell to be best in slot. Right, you could go, I mean, this tac mag's a good perk, but look at that. You get one extra bullet. No way are we doing this. That is a waste of time. Extended mag, waste of time. A penny mag, 2 extra bullets, waste of time. Alloy mag, flared mag was just a little bit better, I think. Steady rounds, you get more stability, so maybe PS4 users want to use that. And accurized rounds, you get a huge range bump. But like I said, I don't think you need accurized rounds either. Flared mag was the choice. So in this column, you've got shoot to loot, under pressure, hip fire grip, grave robber, obviously threat detector, stats for all, subsistence. Subsistence is a big no for this. If you're gonna be doing the vault shot role, that's the identity of the gun in my opinion. Don't use subsistence. This works against vault shot. So every other perk's trash. even shoot to loot. Why are you using shoot to loot on an SMG? Are you that lazy to go and get the ammo? Destiny 2 players nowadays. You don't need shoot to loot on this gun. Don't bother about that. What you want is either threat detector or stats for all. Now it's really close between the two on what I was going to go with. Here's what I'll say to you is this. If you have only threat detector times 1, this is worse. This is a worse reload than what stats for all is. However, if you have threat detector times 2, this exceeds stats for all in the reload stat. You get more reload on a threat detector times 2 if you're in a close proximity, which is 15 meters, which guess what? With an SMG, you probably are in that 15-meter range. So in my opinion, I think threat detector is slightly better, but I think stats for all is really good as well. And it's really up to you. It's your choice which one you want to go with. Right, I still think the threat detector is better. I've always run like threat detector on SMGs in the past, and it's just what I want to do. If you want to go stats for all, then I think the role would change and you would go stats for all, one for all. Like then that's a damage, more of a damage style SMG, and that would be different role to what I'm showing you. So that's your choice. It's between those two, but I think threat detector edges it a little bit just because of the times too. Then we've got the second column, disruption break, swashbuckler, permeability, attrition orbs, one for all, as I said, and golden tricon. Right, so the only two perks that you're gonna run with, especially solo, are either Vault Shot for utility, right, or one for all for damage. But Vault Shot adds damage anyways when you're jolting the enemies. So it's Vault Shot that wins. There is some unique things that you could do with permeability, but this is very niche, and once you start doing all that stuff, you're reading too much into the game when you start to try and do permeability. Permeability is like osmosis. The thing about it is when you store the gun, you lose it. It says until you store the gun. If this wasn't where you wouldn't store the gun, like if you stored the gun and kept the element for maybe like 30 seconds, all right, then there's something there. But other than that, this is so niche that you're going too niche and you're thinking far too much about this. Don't go permeability. Attrition orbs is a very niche thing as well. There's more people talking about it. But on a solo perspective, you don't want to run this either. It's Vault Shot because Vault Shot has access to stun an Overload champion solo without even having to run Overload. Do you realise how important that is? And it's very good on Ag Clear. Now, Vault Shot with stats for all would instantly proc it because all the Vault would link out to the enemies. But as I said, Threat Detector times 2 is a little bit more than stats for all anyways. So that's what I went with. But now we need to come to the question, is it worth your time to craft a subjunctive, right, over Ikelos? Most of us have the crafted Ikelos, right? So is it more important to have this gun over Ikelos with Vault Shot? And I'm going to answer that question via a real world clip that's going to be coming up, right? Which I'm going to show, which is a master loss sector, which puts you 20 levels under. And it'll give you a small example, a small sample size of the difference between a 900 RPM Vault Shot SMG and a 720 RPM Vault Shot. One last thing I'll say is let's look at the origin traits because you got nano munitions on this gun. Nano munitions adds no benefit to you solo. However, when you're in a fire team, this gun is fantastic. It gives you like Vice Stinger. It keeps reloading itself over and over. Now I know we've got Vault Shot, but you're not reloading after every kill. You don't always play like that. Sometimes you put extra bullets into a champ or you're doing stuff like that. So nano munitions is really good in a fire team, but solo it's useless. But we're not always playing solo. So it's top marks for the nano munitions when you're in a team. This perk, Rasputin's Arsenal, this only works when you're up against shields, right? Which isn't always the time. It isn't always the case these days. Shields are less of a factor in PvE endgame like they used to be. But if you are up against arc shields, it's nice to have. So it is good also, but I think nano munitions wins because it's so good in a fire team. So that's the deal with that. Always put boss spec in your guns now. Don't be rocking minor or major spec because they've changed. The champions now work with boss spec. So you really want to use boss spec generally. Sometimes you might rock major, but you don't need to use minor spec. So don't worry about that. So that's the comparisons between the two. The last couple of clips are just showing you the reload of threat detector with and without with double arc loader, right? And then showing you a real world comparison in the loss sector between Ikelos and Subjunctive. So this little clip's showing you threat detector times 2, times 1, and then 0. Just a visual representation to show you that the weapon's got a good enough reload to be doing vault shot kill on with. So the next two clips are going to be the master loss sector at 1840, so we're 20 power under. Both clips were done very similar in terms of that we can use Anarchy on the Hydra, and the rest of the room is just judged on vault shot killing and then what it's like against the Overload, etc. So the first clip is Ikelos. Very consistent, decent damage output. Hasn't got that crazy rate of fire though. That is one thing against the gun. That's what I noticed between using the two, is that Subjunctive just does. It feels nicer to use on a vault shot basis, if I'm being completely honest. So you decide. It's up to you whether you prefer 720s or 900 RPMs, but I do prefer the 900 RPMs, if I'm being completely honest. We'll get a vault shot activation on this Overload here, so it does a good job. We're a minute in, it's cleared the room, and we've mainly just used the SMG, so it's doing decent. Ikelos, top marks for that, but let's see how Subjunctive compares. So I want to see how it compares on a minor kill basis and what the vault shot's like. Right, plus we've got threat detector times 2 up at like 90% of the time that's activated. So for that alone, that's really good. And we'll just keep doing our killing. The difference between this clip and Ikelos clip is that we spawned in the Overload too soon. So that was one thing that was worked against this clip. It's not the SMG's fault, that was my fault, by the way, just so that you know. But we did get a stun on Overload there from quite a bit away. Did you see that? So that's good marks for that. We're not going to be able to re-stun because we've lost vault shot, so we'll just stun with pulse now. That it doesn't matter. Right, there's some ads at the back of the room. We're just about a minute in. It would have been probably the same time as Ikelos if I hadn't done what I did where I spawned in the Overload too soon. Using it from range here, so you're not getting the kill like that, so you can see, but it's still doing decent there with the vault shot. So yeah, I would also give this top marks, but it feels nicer to use than the Ikelos, I will say that. So that was a comparison between the two. Hope you enjoy. Thank you.